If you are new to making food from scratch, today's the day. We're gonna make garlic knots. This is simple, this is easy, this is beginner friendly. You don't need any weird ingredients, basic kitchen staples. Okay, I am not an amazing cook, chef, baker, any of the things, but I'm learning, and this is one of the things I started with, and I'm very comfortable making. So we are gonna follow a recipe. It's not mine, okay? I found this recipe online. The author's name is Lauren Allen. It's just called garlic knots. The ingredients we need: warm water, active dried yeast, regular sugar, milk, which I never buy milk, so I will be using heavy whipping cream, watered down, okay? I'm not afraid to make substitutions, all right? If it's minor, you can do it. So milk, if you want to follow the directions precisely. Butter, an egg, salt, and of course, flour. Now that's how you're gonna make your garlic knots themselves, okay? Now if you wanna do a topping for your garlic knots, you are gonna need olive oil, butter, garlic powder, and parsley flakes. Now, I would say garlic powder is probably a little bit like an easier way to do it. There's probably some recipes where you use actual garlic, like fresh garlic. That could be an option as well, but for this recipe, we're gonna use garlic powder. So that is gonna be like our garlic butter. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about that because we're gonna make these garlic knots to go in the freezer, and I also freeze the butter. So we'll come back to that more. In the meantime though, I wanna encourage you that these simple ingredients can turn into something you make from scratch in your home today. It is not hard, honestly. We get it going, let it rest and rise, and then we finish it up. It is not hard at all to make homemade garlic knots, okay? What are some of the pros? What are some of the cons? Well, you gotta take the time to do it. But guess what? My freezer has homemade garlic knots in it. I'm not having to remember at the store to buy one more item. I would rather use the ingredients and buy the ingredients and use them for so many different things than at the store be like, okay, here's the pancake mix, here's the garlic knots. This way you can just do it yourself. I know to some people that's a con, to me it is a pro. All right, also with this, we are gonna compare price. So I did break down the expense of this recipe itself, and we're gonna run that by what it would cost to get garlic knots from, say, Walmart. Okay, so I will show you those numbers at the end as well and see, is it cheaper to make it from scratch? It might be, it might not be. Okay, and then of course there's dietary restrictions and needs. Maybe you want to use a certain type of butter or a certain type of this. Maybe you want less preservatives. There's so many reasons to try, and also just the simple confidence building of making things from scratch. So let's jump right into it. We need 1/3 cup of very warm water. So way down there at the 1/3 line. It's a little challenging to see on camera, but warm. This cannot be piping hot because it will kill your yeast. So keep it just warm. Now we are gonna do 2 1/4 teaspoons. So here's 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoon, 1/4 teaspoon. I'm gonna wipe this off real quick and come back to do the sugar. And then we are doing 1/4 teaspoon of sugar. That is essentially gonna feed the yeast. We mix it up a little bit. This is what we're looking like. Very murky and very flat. And what's gonna happen is ideally you're gonna see some rise and some bubbling. Okay, so we're gonna give it 5, 10, and maybe even 15 minutes. Go do a job, go do some dishes, go do the laundry. Come back and check on this in a little bit with me. Okay, so our yeast mixture is going, but not quite done yet. In the meantime, we actually can move on to the next step. So the next step is we need 1 1/3 cup of milk warmed. So I don't typically buy milk, but I got some heavy whipping cream. So this is obviously a lot thicker than milk. You guys might think this is absolutely insane, but I'm gonna use this. And we're just gonna stop about there. And the recipe called for 1 1/3 cup. So I'm gonna go add some water till I get to this 1 1/3 cup right here. And that'll thin it out a little bit. Call me crazy, but that's what I'm doing. Okay, now I am at the 1 1/3. The bubbles are making it look higher than that, and I'm gonna go throw it in the microwave. Okay, so we now have the warm milk. Now you might think this is a little crazy, but I'm gonna take my 5 tablespoons of butter, which ideally has been sitting out at room temperature and has softened. I'm gonna actually put that in the warm milk, not to like fully melt it, but to just continue to make it softer. So I'm gonna do that real quick. And yes, I do know I need to invest in a tripod to help me hold my camera. Okay, so now we have 1 1/3 cup of milk warm. We got 5 tablespoons of butter. We are going to do 1/4 cup of sugar. And I don't know about you guys, but I definitely try to clean up as I'm going. So if you'll notice things go disappearing between clips, that's right, I'm cleaning up. Okay, so 1/4 cup of sugar. I'm gonna put that in there as well and just let it sort of disintegrate a bit. Now I need 2 hands, but we are gonna do 1 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So let me do that real quick. Okay, all the salt is in there. Now, I believe the last item we need at this phase is the egg. I'm not gonna put the egg in here. What I would rather do is take my clean, empty bowl, and I'm gonna crack the egg in here just to make sure I don't mess up on any shell. I prefer, if possible, to crack an egg in its own place. So let's do that. Okay, so this is currently where we are at. So we're getting a little bit of bubbling going on. Kind of see that overhead bubbling. We got our egg ready to go. And then here we have our mixture. The sugar has settled, so I'm actually gonna get a knife out, stir this up a little bit, maybe chop some of that butter a little more, because I do want this to mix well in a little bit here. And then our final ingredient for making the actual garlic knots would be the flour. So I have that out and ready to go. As I said, I like to clean up as I go, and I'm definitely not an amazing chef or cook or baker, but I'm doing my best, and this is what that looks like. Okay, now let's, once again, where are we? This is where the line is. That's where the bubbles are. This is looking great. You could let it go longer, but there's no need. If yours is not rising, dump it and try starting again. Maybe your water was too hot. Now, if your yeast is bad, that is a problem. I keep mine in the fridge. I take it out. I use it. Typically, it goes pretty well. So for me, this is the experience. What we are going to do is I'm going to actually dump this one first. Another thing to keep in mind, if for any reason your milk mixture is like extremely hot, don't pour the yeast in, because again, if that is too hot, it will kill the yeast. Now, it says you can use like a hand mixer. I actually don't usually get my hand mixer out for this. I just kind of like try to beat the egg up, and I try to like beat the butter up. And again, the more softened your butter was beforehand, the better off you're going to be. So my first step should have been set out the butter. That would be step number 1. Maybe I'll add a note at the beginning of this video. Let me tell you something else. Trying to do cooking videos, incredibly hard to film yourself. Credit for all the cooking channels out there. You are amazing. Okay, so pretty happy with that. Overall, I'm comfortable with the temperature. So we are going to throw our yeast in. It looks kind of funny, but just get as much of that as you can in there. Voila. All right, so now we are mixing that in. Now we are going to do 4 to 4.5 cups of flour. So we're going to quickly do 4 and we'll work from there. I do like to, not quickly, but slowly mix it in. If I had 2 hands available, I would probably scrape this off with a knife, but I'm just going to kind of eyeball it for today. We're going to call that a cup. So that is 1. We are going to take the time to stop it and mix it in. There are some slight butter chunks. It's not the end of the world when we need this later. That will mostly squish out those butter chunks. And also, because we're making a bread, butter's delicious. So it's not going to hurt anybody. If they get a butter chunk, who cares? That's like a treasure. All right, cup number 2. A little off, but close enough. Like I said, it's 4 to 4.5. So it'll be just fine. Cup number 3. I'm actually going to set you down and do a little bit of mixing. Okay, we are at 3 cups. This is where it starts getting a little bit thicker to manage. I switched from the whisk to the spatula here, and we still have another cup of flour to add. Okay, now I've got you guys propped up. I switched over, got rid of the whisk, switched over to a spatula. This is what it looks like with 3 of the cups of flour in. So if you see any chunks of butter that you want to try to like squish, now's a great time to do that. We're getting very doughy. All right, this is cup number 4. All right, now it's really gonna get thick, so that's why I need that second hand on the bowl. And we're gonna mix until eventually this is kind of gonna start turning into more like kneading. You guys wanna know something funny? You are sitting propped up on a thing of animal crackers to get this shot. I am not a professional YouTuber. I'm also not a professional cook or chef or anything, and I can make these. You can too. All right, I hope the low quality of this video actually encourages you. You know, I'm not somebody that has it all figured out. All right, I'm just a mom trying to make more and more and more food from scratch, one recipe at a time. Usually I will introduce something. I tend to try it a lot, and I just keep trying it till I get it, and then I move on to the next recipe. Like, for instance, banana bread. I have memorized our banana bread recipe that I found. I've got it in my head now, and that's honestly something I'm very proud of. Whereas like these garlic knots, they're not in my head. I still have to follow the recipe, and that's okay. I don't make them often enough. But I'm learning, and I'm trying, and you can too. That's what I want to encourage you, is that like, you can do this. This isn't going to take me all that long. It takes me longer because I'm filming, honestly. If I weren't filming, I'd have this whipped together already, and we'd be rising. Okay, now you want to make sure you clean off the bottom and get all of our goodness and get it all worked into this bread here in a minute. There might be some sticky on the bottom. There might be some dry. Why not get it all right? Groceries are expensive. Now, this is the point where if you're not used to working with bread, you're going to want to do too much flour because you're going to be scared of sticky. Don't be scared of sticky. Just keep working it and you'll get rid of that sticky. And if you need to put flour on your hand, you can. Another option is actually to put water on your hand and work with the dough. I'm not going to do that today, but that's something with sourdough I sometimes will do because it's harder to fight it with flour. And then you're going to make your bread get kind of dense because you're just putting too much flour into it. You're going to make it like hard. You don't want a hard cake. You don't want hard bread. So this is the point where I'm going to take the spatula out. I'm going to probably dump a little bit of flour on my hands. And I'm actually going to knead it in the bowl because then I don't have to make a mess right now on my countertops. So we're sticking. So let's flip this. Just keep working it in. And I try to, in a sense, touch it like as little as possible because I don't want all that dough stuck to me. All right, so this is what we're looking like. I've still got plenty of flour in the bottom of the bowl. Just keep pulling those edges. We're squishing that butter if we didn't get it squished all the way. And we're working a little bit more flour in because we're still pretty sticky. Like, we're pretty sticky. All right, if there's anything you want to work off the edges of your bowl, now's a good time for that. And please watch this video multiple times before you make the garlic knots. Get your ingredients out, set them up in a way that makes sense, kind of like I did. Separate them out and go over it again and again so you don't make mistakes. Then what you can do is in the settings corner on the video, there's like kind of a little icon that looks like a tool. You can actually watch this video at a slower speed. I know it might make my voice sound funny, but if you want to slow me down, you can do that. Okay, now I'm not happy with this. This is a little more sticky than I'd like. So I am actually going to add a tiny bit more flour and try not to get my nasty hands in my flour. Okay, just a little bit more, get a little closer to that 4.5. But later when we make these into garlic knots, I am going to roll them out on a floured surface. So they will kind of sneakily get a little more flour in them. So that's where you want to underdo the flour if you can manage it. Again, that's going to depend on how comfortable you are with this. The best way to make bread, in my opinion, would be as little flour as you can do. Never hurts to have extra butter. And you want them as fluffy as possible. So that means You want a good rise on that initial like yeast. You want a good rise on this dough, and that takes time and patience. So we are going to not rush this, or we're going to end up with dense garlic knots, and we want airy and fluffy. Okay, so I think I'm going to roll this around, get any extra flour. I'm feeling good about this. It's not like sticking to me. So what I do, some people put a towel across it. I actually go grab a couple wet paper towels just to like try to keep a little moisture in there. So I'm gonna do that, be right back. You do whatever works for you, but this is how I'm doing it. Now, if you have any like pets or anything, make sure your animals aren't gonna get to this, but I'm gonna leave this for, who knows, 1 hour, 2 hours, maybe even 3 hours. Right now, I'm gonna mark down that it is 11:09. So I will tell you how long I let this rise. Now, also, while this is rising, we could go ahead and move on to the garlic topping. I will probably do that here in a little bit. Okay, let's do a quick check-in. So here's how the dough is looking. I would love more rise than this, but this might be what we're getting. This is right at about 2 hours of rise time. So we're gonna set that aside. I've got flour sitting out ready to go when I do roll those. For right now though, we are gonna make the like garlic butter topping. So we need garlic powder, parsley, I'm running a little low on, olive oil, also running a little low on, and a tablespoon of butter. Okay, so we're just gonna cut about a tablespoon of butter, and we are gonna give this a melt. I would melt the butter first, then mix everything in. We don't wanna scorch our spices. Okay, so there's our butter, just about melted all the way, close enough anyway. We are going to do 1 tablespoon of olive oil. We are gonna do 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. And then parsley, I'm running a bit low on, it said a ½ teaspoon. If anything, I'm okay with more parsley. Since it's, we'll call it close enough. All right, I'm just gonna use my butter knife and stir this around a little bit. It's definitely not the prettiest looking thing in my opinion, and I think partially that's the garlic powder. It would be nice to find a different recipe that maybe uses like fresh garlic. I also think you can add more butter and olive oil, like change your ratio a little bit. So here's how that's looking. Again, I would rather go heavier on the butter. I have made it before and I messed up and I did too much garlic powder and it really overtook the butter. Now, what I would recommend, I don't think this is enough for this recipe. I think you should double or triple this personally. And then I'll take it even further and say, okay, make this, make your garlic knots, eat some of them fresh, and then I like to freeze them. So we'll freeze some garlic knots, but I will also freeze garlic butter. So I have these blocks of garlic butter I can break apart and throw on garlic knots. Okay, this is how I make life easy as a mom. Every time I make garlic knots, I don't want to make fresh garlic butter. My freezer is essential, and this is how I get it done. So we now have our garlic butter ready. Garlic knot rolling will be what is next. Okay, so I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. My kids are gonna be home in a little bit, and I wanna get this video done. So we are at 1:13 right now, so we're at about 2 hours, okay? 2 hours that this got to rise. Would have loved to have done it longer, but I'm a busy mama. Now, this recipe says it makes 24 servings, so I try to make it kind of even. We're gonna just cut it in half. So that's 12 and 12. Now we're gonna cut them in half again. Now this is 6, 6, 6, and 6. All right, so let's just move these aside. I need to make this into 6 garlic knots. I'm gonna cut that in half. And now cut it into thirds. And the goal here is to make your pieces as even as possible. That way your garlic knots come out even, okay? Otherwise you're gonna have giant ones and little ones. Sometimes does that happen? Absolutely. The goal is to make them uniform. Are we going to? No. And do we ultimately care at the end of the day? Like, no. But it helps to bake them more evenly because your little ones will get burnt and your big ones won't be done. So now I am just casually rolling these out, trying not to add too much flour to it unless I feel I need to. I like to get them about close to a foot. And then so grab and you just make it into a knot. No big deal. They don't need to be perfect or anything. So that is 1 down, 24 to go. Like I said, divide your sections up evenly and you'll get it done. So I'm going to put it on fast mode and blow through this. Now, I can already tell you, mine are not the same in size. You could get out your scale and weigh it in grams when you divide it up and try to make it more even, but I simply don't choose to do that. Alrighty, and just like that, we got 24 garlic knots ready to go. Now, you could let these rise a little bit or go straight in the oven. I need to go pick up kids soon, so I don't think I'm gonna have time to throw them in the oven, but what I am gonna do is get out some cookie sheets and set them on there. Should have done that while I was doing this, but it is what it is. And yeah, we'll come back and have some amazing garlic knots here soon. Okay, so at this point, the garlic knots have been formed. We put them on the cookie sheets, sheet pans, whatever you want to call them, and I had to go do a pickup. So they had some time to sit there, probably an hour, hour and a half altogether by the time I got back to them. So they did some rising, some fluffing up, and filling out. They look amazing in my opinion. So then what do I do with these garlic knots? Well, I'm gonna bake them, but here's the key. I don't bake them all the way. If we want 4 for dinner that night, I'll bake those separately and I'll bake them all the way. But the other ones, I'll bake them like 6, 7, 8 minutes and then take them out, let them cool down. I will flash freeze them, which basically means put them in the freezer individually. Then once they're frozen, I will throw them in a bag together. Now, if you throw them in a bag when they're like warm, they could all stick together. That's why I freeze them separately, so they're kind of like their own unit, then they go in a bag. I store these in my freezer, and any day that I want garlic knots with a meal, I just pull out, say 4 for my family. I will set them out and let them thaw a bit before baking them and like finishing them off. This is why, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I like to freeze my garlic butter. So I'll make a batch of garlic butter, usually bigger than this recipe says. I'll sort of like flatten it out in a Ziploc baggie, so that's really thin, and then later I'll go break it up. And what you can do when you make garlic knots, say I'm pulling 4 out of the freezer and I'm gonna make them. So the garlic butter, you could put it on the knot and put it in the oven and let it melt there. Or you could put it in the microwave, melt it, and then like brush it on, or just even set it out and let it melt. Whatever the case is, you could brush it on or set it on and let it just naturally melt. So completely up to you and how you do it. My point is, I can make pasta in any shape, size, or form and throw garlic knots in it in a flash because I make them in advance. All right, this is the beauty of you can do home cooked, but still have convenience. I still have like freezer garlic knots in a sense, but I didn't pay the price. So what I want to mention on the price is I did the math on this recipe, and based on my current grocery store prices, I would have paid $1.75 to make this batch of 24 garlic knots. I looked it up at Walmart and found a box of the Great Value, which I believe was the cheapest I could find, and it was $2.78. Now, I thought the box would have 8 in it. It only had a 6 count. So let's multiply that times 4 to get to our 24, and that puts us at $11.12. So we're comparing $1.75 to $11.12. for homemade versus store-bought at Walmart. Now, some people would say, again, though, it's about convenience. I think homemade is almost more convenient because when I go to the grocery store, I just buy my staples. I buy my flour, I buy my sugar, my butter, my cream. I'm not buying, oh, I need garlic knots this week, like a specific box of a specific item. I buy the ingredients and I do with them what I choose. So for me, that is more convenient. And speaking of ingredients, on the recipe, so I used an older version of this recipe. I went to look it up and it was the 2026 version. So the measurements are all the same, but the wording might be slightly different on the steps. So don't be worried about that, but overall, same recipe by the same author. They just updated it, as most creators do. So that recipe will be linked down in the description, as well as any other notes that I feel like I need to make as far as things I may have omitted during this video. I'll also put any notes, captions on the video if I forgot something and need to mention. Garlic knots are so forgiving. They are an easy bread to make. It's practically not even a bread, okay? You don't need a rise of a sourdough. You don't need perfection. Garlic knots are very forgiving, very beginner friendly, and a great way to start your journey making homemade foods, specifically homemade breads. I hope this was a great place to start for you in building your confidence in your cooking from scratch journey. All right, remember that recipe will be down in the description, and I encourage you to check out more videos on my channel.